first class of Ashtavakra Gita. Ashtavakra Gita is a text, non-dual text, Vedantic text. And so I will start with a little bit of introduction about it, and just so that we understand about what this text is about, and also a little bit story. So today, I don't know how much we will go into the actual slokas itself, but today's class will be more of an introduction of the text, the background of the text, and in what way we can actually use this text, on how we should contemplate or absorb this text. Okay. So firstly, Ashtavakra Gita, this is the name of the text. As many of us are familiar with the word Gita, there are many literal texts in India, Sanskrit texts, with the word Gita. Gita is literally a song or a celestial song, a divine song, which talks about some high scriptural teachings or truth of reality. And there are a lot of Gitas. Generally most Gitas are part of some larger background stories, like the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata. In the whole teachings of in the whole story of Mahabharata, there is a section called Bhagavad Gita, and that is specifically where Lord Krishna gave the teachings, spiritual teachings to Arjuna, his student and friend. And then there are other Gitas. There are several Gitas. I don't think anybody has a specific count, but there are many Gitas. Like Bhagavatam, Bhagavatam is also a Puranic text and a spiritual text. It has a lot of stories. And in there we see many Gitas, such as Uddhava Gita, Avadhuta Gita, Guru Gita, and a lot of such things in there. But they are on the background of these stories that's going on. Whatever stories are being narrated, in that background, there is a Gita, a teaching given out. Now, in Ashtavakra Gita, we don't necessarily have a background story like that. Meaning it's an independent teaching, it's an independent writing. But yet there are stories related to the relationship or the kind of a like interactions between King Janaka and Ashtavakra, sage Ashtavakra. So there are several stories related to that, and there are firstly, so I'll just give you a little bit background. Again, there are many versions on this, so it's very hard to kind of say this is one right version. So, but then generally King Janaka is a king. He has a lot of responsibilities. Now it's very interesting because many people kind of consider King Janaka the one who was the father of Sita, in Ramayana. It may be true also, but it is not necessary that it is the same King Janaka. But the King Janaka portrayed here is one who is a self-realized, he's a self-realized student or a master by himself. So he doesn't have, he does not that he has to, there are no other stories which say he was a king and then he gave up the kingdom and then he became a self-realized teacher. These are how many times. So this is one of the most encouraging thing for all of your householders. Why? Because King Janaka had a lot of responsibilities and yet he was a self-realized master. He had that highest realization. So it is, and of course, in a lot of our scriptural teachings, it is not that only sannyasis or sages, like who have renounced everything, have reached realization. Many householders too have. There's a in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, for example, there's also a story of a king, Ajata Shatru. The section in Brihadaranyaka is called Ajata Shatru Brahmana. So there, one student, a Brahmana student, goes to the king and tells him that I want to teach you something. Usually, when somebody wants to force their teaching on you, there is always a skeptical thing. We have to be careful. So he says, I want to teach. So then the king says, okay, if you want to teach, I will listen. So then he teaches. And after a lot of teachings, the king starts asking him some deep questions about the higher realities, the highest realities. What is the ultimate reality? What is that truth? Like things about this Nirguna, Nirakara, Brahman and all that. At that point, the Brahmana says, I don't know the answers for this. And he says that let me go and ask my teacher. And so he goes asks his teacher, or his father actually. His father is a teacher in there. And his father and teacher says, even I don't know the answers for this, So then they come to, and especially this student, he comes to the king and tells him, I want to know the highest reality, that answers for this. I think his name is Balaki there. He asks that Ajata Shatru. So Ajata Shatru says, you are a Brahmana, so I cannot take you as a student, meaning like generally, in that hierarchical structures in ancient India, these things were maintained. But he says, I can tell you, I can talk to you about it, just as a friend would talk about it. Now, the same thing also we see with the King Janaka. King Janaka's famous student was Shuka, Shukacharya or Shuka Maharaj, who was the son of Vyasa. So he was also a very highly evolved, a realized master, and right from that birth, at the stage of that birth, he already he said that he had that highest vairagya. He said that I will not take any responsibilities in this world. I want to be free. And so, right, they say when he was born, he made his father promise that I will come out of the womb only if you promise that I can be a renunciant. So anyway, these are the several stories, And then there is a story of a lot of training that how Shuka Maharaj was sent to King Janaka for realizing the highest reality, the truth. And King Shuka was reluctant because he said, what does a king have to teach me? What can I learn from a king? But that is said of King Janaka, he was like told by Ashtavakra how he should live in this world. And the example is given that he was like a lotus, a lotus that is in the dirt or which grows in that moss or that water, the water may be dirty and all that. But yet a lotus is kind of pure or so beautiful, which comes out of this, despite all this dirt around it. So like that, his inner state was always pure, and yet he was involved in all these transactions in the worldly life, doing all that he had to do. And several famous stories are there about King Janaka's teachings, and one of the teaching is that he has. There is a story where he was so inwardly detached, Asanga, that one time that he and Shuka were talking about some very high spiritual teachings, very high spiritual truth. At that time, there was a fire in the palace, and that fire came so close, and all that it started burning Shuka's few things that he had, like an extra set of clothes or books or something, and he got upset. And but King Janaka's, his whole palace was burning. He was unflinched. He was not disturbed even a little bit by that. So those are like a lot of stories there, like how in his inward state of mind was. Okay, so that is King Janaka. King Janaka and his qualification, Adhikaritvam. He was a very highly qualified student, and he had that ability. Now, Ashtavakra is a sage, as the word goes, Ashtavakra, 8 deformities. So the story goes that when he was in his mother's womb, he heard his father reciting the Vedas. A lot of the Vedas he was reciting. And from the mother's womb, he told his father, "You're making mistakes in your recitation of Vedas." So his father got so angry. He said, like, you're not even taken birth and you are correcting me. So may you be born with 8 deformities. So these are in India, of course, this curse and all that, there's a different things also. Like, they say that those are there for a certain reason, either to teach people or for some spiritual evolution for that own person and all that. But anyway, he was already he was already a self-realized kind of master, or a very highly evolved master. And so he was born with that and he was not concerned. The idea is that even though he had all these deformities, he knew that he was pure, or he was that perfect being. His consciousness was untouched, was perfect. And so this is the thing that, that generally we say from a Vedantic perspective. We all also have so many vikaras. We all also are more than more than 8 deformities, if not physically, mentally. And physically too, none of us are perfect, right? And yet, despite our physical and mental deformities or shortcomings, that inner being in us is complete and pure. That Chaitanya, that inner Chaitanya is pure consciousness, is Nitya Shuddha Mukta Buddha. It is eternal, it is pure, it is free, it is already liberated, it doesn't need further liberation. And it is the wisdom embodiment, Buddha, awakened. So that inner awake, that even we say inner, the real essence of who we are. The classes we did last few times, the satsangs, the true essence of who we are, that is pure. That essence is, and that doesn't need any kind of a cleaning or a reforming. What needs reforming, what needs change, what needs to be cultivated is all our mind, our buddhi, what we call as our inner instrument, antakarana. That instruments of our mind, intellect, ego, and memory, these need refinement, these need to be cleansed. But the consciousness does not need to be cleansed. It's pure by itself. And this is the inner potential of everyone, no matter who they are or what they have done or what they haven't done, or what caste or what religion or what kind of thing they're born into. That consciousness, that essence of everyone is pure. And there is no discrimination, disparity. So, okay, so this is this was his state, his inner state. So he was not really affected by that. He continued with his kind of whatever, study sadhana and growing up. And but what had happened is that one of the stories goes that although when he was born, before he was born, his father went to King Janaka's court. So King Janaka was known for encouraging people who had a lot of wisdom and intellectual capacity. So he had the best scholars in his court. So, in ancient days, the kings were not just people who especially those who had right knowledge and right, had gone to Gurukul, they had their spiritual upbringing also. So they had proper perspective. They valued the the path of dharma and the path of moksha for people. So they realize that where they are, they have to follow that righteous living, and they have to also encourage this kind of a spiritual activities. So the highest kind of priority they gave were to spiritual, to people who had the spiritual thing. It is said that if there was a rishi or some sage who came to the king's court, they cannot turn him away. They have to leave everything and attend to him. I mean, this is the kind of a training, the ancient kings also had. Not every king, but most kings followed that. So King Janaka's court was known for that. A whole array of scholars, people who had the understanding, a depth of understanding, they were there. One among them, I think the name is Dandi. He also had a lot of mystical powers, or rather, he had abilities. He was a scholar, and he also was connected to Varuna Devata, the god whom we consider the god of waters. Anyway, so this is different version, but we can say that he had this condition that if, like debates, like in all the Indian philosophical schools, there are these debates. So the scholar who would come and debate with him and they would fail in that debate, he had the condition that they would become his slave, or they would serve him according to how he wants them to serve. So he had everyone come, and many scholars come to him and debate with him, because this was a tradition. People would go and debate and all that. And similarly, these Ashtavakra's father, who was also a scholar, he went to King Janaka's court and he entered a debate with Dandi. And as most people, he also lost. And they were all sent to serve some yajna that Varuna Devata was doing, that the god of waters was doing some yajna, fire ceremony. And there they needed a lot of these priests and scholars and all that. So, in other words, this was an excuse through which he would make them do those yajnas. Or you can say that he became his slave. So a different story are there. They would just serve him, the scholar. Okay, so now what happened is Ashtavakra, after some age of growing up, he began to wonder, what happened to my father? Why I have not seen my father? And his mother, those days there was no, all this internet, email and all, right? So his mother also didn't know. She said he went to King Janaka's court and he has never returned. So those days, people were in forests, and is gone to the kingdom and is never come back. So Ashtavakra decides that he will go in look of his father. They say that he went along with Shvetaketu, who was his uncle. But let's say he went there, and there were many people in King Janaka's court, and there were a lot of conditions on how you can enter. And this was a young boy. Ashtavakra at that time was fairly young, and a teenager maybe, or a young adult, whatever, maybe had finished his Gurukul and all that. So we can say he was a young adult, And he went into the King Janaka's court, and there are different versions. But one of the very popular versions is that as soon as he entered King Janaka's court, he was a Brahmin, and he was a sage, right, or a son of a sage. So they allowed him to go, but all the ministers, the scholars and all that, when they saw him come with 8 deformities, meaning he could not walk, his legs were twisted, his hands were twisted. So he was not walking as normal people walk, right? It was maybe a funny sight, So many people in the court began to laugh. They started laughing out loudly. Laughing means giggling and teasing and things like that, that how can such a person come see the king and all that. And then seeing them laugh, he started also laughing, or he started also loudly bursting out. At that time, the king came, and the king kind of figured out why everybody is laughing. And they asked him, the king asked him, why are you laughing? I can understand why everybody else is laughing, but why are you laughing? So at that point, King Janaka, Ashtavakra tells him that, I thought your kingdom has some of the very well-known scholars, the most intelligent people. But yet I see that now that they don't have that right understanding because they are recognizing only the body. They're only seeing me as a body. They don't see the true essence of my being, meaning they are seeing that outer form and they are giving that the reality, not that what is the true inner self or consciousness. So this is the then King Janaka realized that he was not just a regular normal person, and that he had some higher realization. And then of course the story goes that he had a debate with that scholar there, that Dandi, and then after that long discussion, they came to that many points where there is a whole literature of that in Mahabharata also, where what the nature of that the debate was. But of course, that um, uh, we don't know if that is a complete version. But one of that is, where they say that one question, specific question on number 13 or something, that he was not able to answer. That Dundee was not able to answer, and he told, and he released all the people. Or at that time, that Yajna of Varuna was also over, and his father and everyone came back and all that. But then this is how it ended up that Ashtavakra became the teacher of King Janaka. Okay, so now in this also there are few other stories, and I won't go too much into all of this, but many of my other classes I've shared this. But couple of popular stories are there about how the realization was given to King Janaka. And in one of the stories, King Janaka was actually saying that this is a popular story again about how King Janaka once asked, or rather, this story is about King Janaka had a dream, and he woke up from the dream. And although he woke up from the dream, he was a bit lost, and he started kind of saying some loud things and all that. What had actually happened in the dream was he had a dream that he had lost his kingdom to to an opponent or a neighbor king. And it so happened that he was banished out of that kingdom. And as he was banished out of that kingdom, he had to walk for miles and he had no food. And somehow he managed to get like one small, like a morsel of food. And just as he was about to eat that, there were two bulls who were fighting. Or there's also another version where there was an eagle that flew, and that morsel got tossed out of his hand. And he started begging for food. He said, "Oh, somebody give me food. Somebody give me food." And in that state, he woke up. So his wife says, like, "Why are you begging? You are the king. Why are you begging for food? You have all the riches, all the food in the kingdom." So at that state, he was not a normal person, right? I mean, he was already an advanced student. So he started asking, is this state, which is a waking state, is this the reality? Or is my dream, was that the reality? So, most of us would just dismiss, oh, that was just a dream. I'm glad to be awake and I'm done with it, right? But he said, no, he was a advanced student, right? So he said, which is the reality? Antah pragnyam ya bahish pragnyam. We say in Mandukya, Nantah pragnyam na bahish pragnyam no bayatah pragnyam na prajnanaganam. The real state of consciousness is not that outer waking state, nor that dreaming state, nor the dual state where you feel like you're slightly awake and you're slightly dreaming, nor the deep sleep state, na prajnanaganam. na pragyam. And it of course that goes on. But so here he started contemplating which is real, the dream is real or the waking is real. And of course, many teachers came, and then they say that ultimately many of them could not answer him because he kept on in that state. And then, of course, Ashtavakra came, and there's teachings related to that, which we will go through partly here. But also another version is that one time Janak Maharaj was in a deep contemplation, and he had heard somewhere, and this is actually Ramana Maharshi's version, Ramana Maharshi also adored these teachings of Ashtavakra, and also same did Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa told Narain, that you should study and master the teachings of Ashtavakra Gita. And it said that he was, Swami Vivekananda, it was transformed him, these teachings. So anyway, so this is, so then another version is that one time he was, Janaka Maharaj was saying the spiritual path is too long. It's such a long spiritual path. When can I get realization? And he had heard somewhere in that scripture, realization is as immediate as you put 1 feet. Those days the kings used to ride on the horses, right? 1 feet they put on that one of that straps, that foot holder, and they put that other feet. He says that before you can put that other feet on that strap, you can be self-realized. In fact, Ramana Maharshi loved this version a lot because in a way that was his own experience, right? That sudden realization. So this Janaka kind of couldn't believe that. He said many people work for years and years to get self-realized. How is that possible? So that is where Ashtavakra gives him that teaching that what is you, that consciousness, does not need any change, does not need to be purified. It is already purified. That consciousness, once the intellect is convinced about it, and there is no going back on that. Now, this is a background stories. Okay, we haven't actually started the actual teachings yet, but embedded in this is that one on how these teachings have come about. Now, here again, we see directly the question and answers when we come to this version of the Ashtavakra Gita. The question and answers have already started, whether it started based on that story which we just talked about, that dream thing, or the one where Janaka is actually asking everyone, if anybody can explain to me how anybody can be realized before 1 foot is placed into that stirrup or that holder. I will give you all the riches. And then again, they say Ashtavakra comes and gives him that story, So here, let us go into the outline of the text, Ashtavakra Gita. So here the teachings has begun. It starts with one question. And this is the only real question that is there at all. Like, in many of the Upanishads and all, we see that there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of dialogues, For example, in Prashna Upanishad, there's like 5 or 6 disciples asking questions. Chandogya Upanishad, Shvetaketu has a lot of questions, and the same answer is given. How you are that Tattvamasi, Tattvamasi. So all these Upanishads are giving, like, a lot of them is based on this dialogue between the student and the teacher. Here, there's only one question that Janaka asks. But then the dialogue starts where it is not just that the Upanishad format where the teacher is giving all the answers. Here, it is also the first chapter. We see that the Ashtavakra gives the teachings. Then, second chapter, King Janaka is already in realization. He has already realized the truth. And this is what they say, that Ashtavakra makes through that teachings or that direct transmission of knowledge, like there are transmissions of knowledge different ways. The most common ways where we teach, the Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, and that leads to what is called as Shruti, Yukti, Anubhuti. Shruti is that teachings, the scriptural teachings. That is followed by Yukti, that like the highest truth is told. Why the highest truth has to be told? Because this highest reality is not something that I can gain through my senses and intellect. See, if we could find out there's a whole discussion where Shankaracharya explains why is there a need of Vedas. If somebody could figure this out by themselves, then there was no need of Vedas. We say Vedas is a pramana by itself, meaning Vedas is a authority, a means of knowledge by itself. Like how I use my eyes and I say that this is a pen, and for this I'm using my eyes. This is a pramana for me. My eyes are the pramana through which I get this knowledge. That highest reality, the ultimate truth of ultimate reality, that is not indriya, not known through indriya. I cannot know it through my ears, my eyes, ears, and senses. Nor can I deduce it through my intellect. But once that knowledge is gained through that Vedas, then we can use logic. It's not that we have to throw out the logic. So what follows Shruti is Yukti. So Vedanta is also based on logic, that they do use logic. All the terminologies used in logic is used in Vedanta also. Shruti, Yukti, then what does all this lead to? Anubhuti, then it becomes your own realization. So this format, is what the teachings are generally given out in. Now, in this, coming to this text, what is happening here is that second aspect, second chapter, Janaka expresses his realization. Like he had gained that knowledge, and that gaining of knowledge in this case is through the teachings. But also we say there is another way of transmission of knowledge, which is from the guru to the student, through the being in tune with the student, mind to mind transmission, sometimes it's called, so that is also, it's a little bit more of a yogic thing involved, but a lot of in Vedanta also there is scope for that, like what we have like in Dakshinamurti, Dakshinamurti is that guru, that one guru, that first guru, and he has all these rishis sitting around him. And Maunam Vyakya Prakatita, Parabrahma Tattva Yuvanam. He is in silence and he is giving the teaching, Maunam Vyakya. And he's teaching. And all of them are sitting in silence and they tuned him to him. And they're all realized through that, just that being in that presence, And this is also the format that Ramana Maharshi believed in. That teachings is in silence, he would say. So he would say he would sit with that. So people would just sit around him, So those are different approaches, but ideally for all of us, we need both. We need the verbal language teaching also. And in that also there is when we are doing the verbal language teaching, if we are attuned, we get that also the teachings. So that is this is also a format to which we learn. Okay, so second chapter is Janaka's realization. He talks about his realization and he pours forth that realization. Now, in order to make sure that he has really got it, or in order to kind of make sure he's established in that, third chapter onwards, Ashtavakra starts testing him, asking him questions. He starts almost poking him, if you're really self-realized, why should you continue to be the king? Why don't you just walk away into the forest, or beg food and live, like how sannyasis are dependent, on anybody else to give them food. If they get food, fine. If they don't, they die. This is the traditional, when we all take sannyasa, and we're all asked to live like that, right? So this is how he's saying, why don't you just do that, So here is where Janaka kind of says that if I'm really self-realized, then I'm not even sannyasi, I'm not even a king, I'm not a kshatriya, I'm not a brahmana, meaning I don't have any identifications. So let whatever is happening happen. I don't need to change anything. Meaning like, if this is my role, let me continue, like that karma that we say, this is the karma we have got in, right? And this is also why, we see like many masters, like you take these examples we are giving here, Ramana Maharshi, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, they had physical illnesses also, because they let that prarabdha work out, that whatever has they brought in, that will work out. So this is what King Janaka says: if I am a householder, if I am a king, and this is my role, this is my duties, let it happen. Uh, let this continue on. And if we take this as the King Janaka that was a father of Sita, we see in that story also, how he was involved with a lot of affairs. He had a lot of things to take care of, and there was a lot of like wars and all that also he had to fight. Anyway, whichever version we take in, but this is how he justifies that. And then, of course, later there is more dialogue going on. The Janaka kind of comes back with more statements, and this is how the whole thing will go on until 20 chapters. So this has nearly about 300 verses, 300 shlokas, I think about 298 or something, in 20 chapters. So we will not do all of them. We will just do the gist of these chapters. And now, one of the points here is that why we are studying this text. Okay, this text is not an actual teaching of Vedanta in a step-by-step way, like how we study other texts. There are introductory texts like Vedanta Sara, Viveka Chudamani, Panchadashi, and all that. These are where you learn the whole methodology, the logical methodology involved in Vedanta is also explained in those texts. This text is ideally, for people who are doing what is called as nididhyasana, meditation on the Vedantic truths. But yet, we generally do this Vedantic meditation only after you have an understanding of Vedanta. So ideally, the format is you have studied Vedanta, you have done mananam also, meaning discussion with your teacher, contemplation, those kind of different processes involved. Mananam processes are very Panchakocha Viveka process, Atmanatma Viveka process. So these are many mananam processes are there, which are once that has been done, then you come into actual nididhyasana. But of course, nididhyasanam can also happen simultaneously. So there are two schools of thought also. There are one school of thought, the Padmapada, the Shankaracharya's one disciple, who said that only Shravanam is the Mukhya Sadhanam, meaning listening and contemplating is the main. Then there are others who say that meditation is important. Meditation is necessary, essential for realization. Meditation, there is different meditations. We talk about this. There is a pre-Shravanam meditation, pre-Vedanta meditation. That is for Chitta Shuddhi, meaning to come to that point your mind is calm, your mind is settled, that you're not caught up in all that emotions, and you can listen, you can contemplate. That is a pre-Vedanta meditation, and that is a lot of the yogas, prakriyas are involved there. Then there is a post-Vedanta meditation. Post-Vedanta meditation is when you have understood the teachings and then you contemplate on that. And that is what we call nididhyasanam. And a lot of the shlokas in Ashtavakra Gita are for nididhyasanam. But yet you see, like if you just look on different places, everywhere Ashtavakra Gita is so popular. They have, many places where there isn't any Vedanta classes, any Vedanta teaching also. They are using this. And many people who don't really kind of fully understand that meaning also, they use it, they quote it. Now, one way from a pure, if you ask a traditional Vedantin, that is a complete no-no. That is not the approach you take. But I will take both the stance. It also has a value. Even if you don't get that full Vedanta thing, even if you just listen to it, It has a value because it creates certain sanskaras, it creates certain impressions. And if, who knows that, in like how, like Ramana Maharshi, many of you might have done previous life, many sadhanas, So you might be ready for that awakening just by listening to that. So the fact that many of you here is a sign that something has struck home, something has hit you about this message, And so this samskaras are there, meaning these impressions are there. And so it is ready for cultivation. It is ready, that thing is ready for to bloom. So we can also take it like that there is nothing wrong in listening to this. There is nothing wrong in contemplating to that. Why? Because these teachings, these teachings are embedded with that highest reality, the highest truth. And the moment we listen to this truth, it awakens something in us. It awakens in us that even the desire to know, will awaken in us. Like, see, this is what we say, the real teachings of Vedanta, captured in these texts like Ashtavakra and all that. It is that it is called as Prameya Pradana. It is meaning it is called as the thing that you know, meaning that thing that you know, it is based on that. I can't think of a right way to translate that. See, what it means is like, if I have to know something, if I am a student, I come to a teacher, then the teacher will assess my ability and they will teach me accordingly. Like if it's a yoga sadhana, right? Like meditation, yoga meditation, or if it is a pranayama, how much according to your capacity you are taught. So that knowledge you are given is based on your capacity. This teaching here, especially, this is the heart of Advaita Vedanta teachings. Here it is not that whether you have this qualification, then you will get this knowledge. In fact, this prakriya is there in Vedanta also, but not in this text. In this text, only the highest truth is told. So that is not changed because you have a different interest or a different capacity. The nature of knowledge is not changed to adapt to you. The nature of the truth is not adapted to make it compatible with you. All other teachings and all other disciplines is where the guru is necessary. Without guru, you can't walk on the path in other paths, and all in to some extent in this path also. But there it is so much so true. Why? Because there, without that guru, you don't get that next step. But here, what happens is that knowledge is there, the wisdom is there. It is not changed. In fact, the same teaching, if you look at many non-dual teachings in Buddhism, they make it a whole path. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And there are so many kind of steps through which until you come to that final thing of non-dual teachings, So here it's not like that. Here the final truth is given right away. That it's there. Not, but it's left to you. Are you qualified for that? So this is where we can study, we can go into it, but yet if we feel that it is not becoming my realization, my contemplation, then we have to be humble enough to say that, okay, I need to get the proper full teachings. Okay, so this is maybe I think I will start the actual text from next class because we have gone quite a bit of time. If any of you have any comments and questions, we can take it up. Those who are interested in coming for this, there is a text. If you are in that group, we will share that text. And one of the main things is, as we study the text, the format is there is a Sanskrit shloka and the English translation of that is there. We generally chant that Sanskrit shloka just for this is how traditionally it is taught. Because there is also a certain power of using the Sanskrit words. As we are talking, the highest reality, it is best stated or best explained or taught in the Sanskrit verses. So we use that, but all the teachings that we will do will be in English only. And as the last point is, maybe I will state this and then I will open up for questions. So there are non-dual teachings. The teachings, there are two formats, and one format is where we stay in a state of where we shut out all our knowing. That state, what we call supreme in many of the, as I was telling you, the Buddhist path is that state of where I don't know anything. We come to that state where I drop all my knowing, that state where we can remain in that inquiry of I don't know. I would remain in that state of I don't know. That is not the format of these texts. These texts are based on completely opposite. This is the reality, and I know that reality. This is how the sage proclaims that, and we are supposed to also follow in that nididhyasana. Meaning, like, this is the reality. Like, to give you an example, where he says that, I'm not the waker, I'm not the dreamer, I'm not the deep sleeper, I am that pure consciousness. So here, this is the affirmation style, like, I am not any of that, but this I am. So here we are using that highest knowledge and we are hammering that highest knowledge, not because it is like another religious kind of a doctrination, of course here it is also, but this is that this is what we say, what Vedanta is trying to do says we are already hypnotized by the way we relate to the world. So here it's trying to get you out of all those hypnotisms. So that highest reality, which is not expressed in words, is tried to be experienced, made known through first negating all possible relations. And this is where we have to also be a little careful, because ultimate teachings here is that what is anatma, meaning that what is not me. Now, we say that many times in religious and spiritual teachings, even we take Bhagavad Gita and all, we say that there is a God and that God is the highest reality, right? Here in the anatma, even God also goes into that anatma here. So this is where that we have to take it in the proper spirit. The highest teachings here is also a negation of that creator God, that form God, or anything that you objectify as God will make you that created. They will give you that sense of being somebody who is created, So that is also negated here, that kind of an highest affirmation. But of course, in the standard Vedanta Prakriya, it doesn't go directly to that kind of negation, but here it is done that way. Okay, so any questions, comments, we will take for a few minutes.
Hello, Namaskaram. Yeah, Aditi here.
Yes.
Just generally inquire that how is it that we're selecting these texts to study and what's the purpose? I mean, could you explain that there are many versions of the Gita and, so how is the study of this going to add up to spiritual purpose, let's say?
Yeah, so these classes here, Aditi ji, are more based on, where we are exploring more the teachings related directly to Vedanta. So, for example, I have a plan, or I have rather some people had requested me, and I'm trying to get into the teachings of Upanishad texts. Many of the Upanishad texts are generally taught. And in order to teach that Upanishad text, some basic understanding is necessary. And so, as we were doing before, we were initially doing like open satsangs on the Vedantic kind of texts. Now, I also have other classes such as Patanjali Yoga Sutra and Bhagavad Gita and others also, where the format is different and is not for Vedanta classes. They are not for Vedanta teachings. So here, in line with the Vedanta, I have to choose texts that will give us some background, and for anybody who doesn't have that lot of background but yet has maybe studied or got some taste of Vedanta or has some understanding of Vedanta, those are the people that I am hoping will benefit most from this. Because if they are able to stay with these texts, and I'm choosing these texts based on the preparation for studying Veda, Upanishads, and other kind of texts. Okay, anybody else has a question?
Swamiji, Namaste. I have a question that how we connect always with the God and presence of God, because we have a lot of distraction and we try to connect, but always we get like because of work, because of family, because of another things, we are like distracted with a lot of things. So it's a simple question that how we can connect with the God and
Huh. So there are different paths. What path kind of resonates with you? This is what we say, right? In a broad sense, there's a path of karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and dhyana yoga and jnana yoga. So all these are different paths, and these are not the only paths. There are also many other different kinds of paths. Like people who are more interested in doing pujas, people who are more interested in doing some kind of a seva. All that different people take. But the idea is that you, according to what interests you most, you take that path. Hmm? So the teachings of Vedas here, Vedanta especially, what we are trying to explore here, is based on having that right understanding of these processes. So somebody who has already started on the spiritual path, they will have to go through some proper training, meaning they have to take either like a mantra, or they have to come, if they're more interested in like a yoga approach, then they have to learn meditation. So those are ways where they feel somewhat connected to something higher. They have some kind of a direct experience, because some experience is necessary for you to have faith to walk on the path. Otherwise, it's just a religious kind of belief you will walk on. So this is where, you have to make some effort to practice something, and that practice will manifest into some experience for you. And as that experience comes, then you will, if you're interested in more studies and if you feel capable to do that, then you should explore that tradition, that path that you're more inclined towards. So like as I was telling before, there are those who are interested in Vedanta or in like these teachings like Ashtavakra Gita and all that. There is a certain kind of a personality. There's a certain kind of people who are ready for this, we would say. Then there's who don't feel interested this, then they can try that like the Bhagavad Gita teachings approach, those, or the Patanjali Yoga Sutras approach. So these are the basic ways through which we first have to explore first, before we even go deep into a lot of like exploring the teachings. We have to have some practice. So we have to have some sadhana. If we don't have any sadhana, then it becomes very difficult. Say a closing prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.